and then we're good.
Yeah, so the recording just started, and I'm gonna start to mute everyone, and you remute yourself.
All right, very good. Hello, everybody. It's Sebastian from ENZYME at Work. Another week, another guest, another discussion. So this time we are going to talk about policy making and policy discussion in the field of sustainable chemistry. For me, these two things are must have to understand what is the link in between both, because they interact very strongly with each other. For me, it was kind of gray zone. So that was like, I'm sure I'm not the only one. So I was looking for the right person to tell us about these links and what it is. And we have Anna today that is going to introduce herself. So quickly about this podcast, I'm trying to, let's say, educate and get a possibility to learn and listen from experts about collaboration, science, sustainability, and circular economy with a touch of entrepreneurship, which is key, in order to have, let's say, the learnings we need to tackle global warming as a whole. So without further ado, please, Anna, if I may ask you to introduce yourself, and welcome, by the way.
Thanks a lot. I just noticed that I have to mute everyone again, so just that you are aware that you remute yourself again. Yeah, hello everyone. My name is Isabel Becker. I'm the Policy Director at the International Sustainable Chemistry Collaborative Center, in short IC3. The IC3 is a Germany-based center that aims to anchor sustainable chemistry globally. I'm right now based in Heidelberg. We have a lovely weather. It's a sunny day in Germany, and I'm very excited about it, and also very excited to have you listeners here. And thanks a lot also, Sebastian, for the invitation to this podcast. I'm sure some of you are wondering, sustainable chemistry, maybe you've come across it, but sustainable chemistry means to take all the three aspects of sustainability into account at every step of the life cycle of a product, a process, or a material. The three aspects are social, environmental, and ecological. What do we do at the IC3? At IC3, we want to contribute towards a sustainable transformation of the chemical and associated sectors, whereas we are active in fields such as innovation, science, education, research, and policy. For example, with our Global Innovation Hub, which I think is quite interesting for the listeners of today, we consult over 200 startups in sustainable chemistry solutions. Entrepreneurship in this field is often directly related to local and regional challenges, and the motivation of the founders is often originating from personal experience of these local and very specific issues. And issues that our entrepreneurs work on are, for example, or can range from contamination of water and soil up to air pollution or the involuntary exposure to hazardous substances. So this means to come across topics in our daily work that cover, for example, questions such as how can we reduce e-waste in Ghana, or how does vegan leather feel and look like? And how can someone produce a skincare product made out of fish skin? Or how can traditional plastics and polymers made out of non-renewable resources being replaced? Or, from my point of view, from a policy point of view, how can we convince decision makers around the globe that action towards tackling chemicals, waste, and pollution challenges are needed now? And also, how can we strengthen underrepresented groups and voices in international chemicals policy? And now I'm coming to the point. But before we dive into the Science Policy Panel, which is an acronym, or in short is SPP, I would like to give you some backgrounds and facts and figures why the chemical sector is especially important in tackling the before mentioned issues, but also global challenges such as climate change, pollution, and the loss of biodiversity. The chemical sector and associated sectors consume 10% of the world's total energy, and it contributes to 8% of greenhouse gas emissions. In addition, the sector plays an important role in preventing pollution, as 90% of global production depends on chemical products. And if we properly think about it, chemicals and chemical products are an essential part of our daily lives. For example, in the water you drink from the tap, in the cosmetics you use to get ready in the morning, in the smartphone we probably use every 5 minutes, or in your food, or even your garden, or your baby's toys. And pollution is also the greatest environmental risk factor for premature deaths and is responsible for 9 million deaths per year worldwide. So not only to protect our health, but also to protect upcoming generations, it is immensely important that we, as individuals, but within a society, but also as academics, researchers, innovators and policymakers pull in the same direction, which goes hand in hand with providing and sharing expertise from the ground and respective sector experience, which I'm sure many of you have. So the science policy interfaces in general are a political instrument that aims to bring all these sorts of expertise under one roof. And in order to build this bridge between science, policy, and society, a SPP for the sound management of chemicals and waste is currently negotiated on UN level and between governments. Other already existing and famous policy interfaces you might have come across are, for example, the IPBES, the Intergovernmental Science Policy Platform on Biodiversity and Ecosystem Services, or the IPCC, I'm very sure you have heard of, the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change. The IPCC is a UN body that is responsible for assessing and advancing scientific knowledge related to climate change. Hereby, in different and long process assessments and special reports, for example, on the effects of global warming of 1.5 degrees, are being prioritized, produced, and published. And sources are peer-reviewed and international available scientific, technical, and socioeconomic literature, but also non-peer-reviewed literature produced by other relevant institutions are being used. This also includes industry. And additionally, to also provide a base for decision-making to policymakers, summary report for policymakers are also prepared, which include headline statements, provide a top-level summary and narrative of key findings. And in the best case, the information that is provided in those reports nudges national policies and serves as a foundational argumentation for further decision-making and implementation of policies in countries. So why I'm telling you that? Because as I already said, the negotiations are still in the making, so it's a bit tough to now already paint the full picture of the SPP, but some elements of the other science policy interfaces I just mentioned might also serve as an inspirational model for the SPP for chemicals and waste. So currently governments and other stakeholders like the UN major groups are meeting on a regular basis to negotiate further the text of the SPP instrument. And the next political meeting will be in Geneva in Switzerland in June 2024 this year.
All right. Do you hear me, Anna?
Yes.
Okay, very good. So I'm going to use some of these startup words. Thank you very much for this landscape overview. I mean, this is highly needed from my own perspective.
Absolutely.
We need to know about these topics. If you are a startup, if you are into academia, if you are a corporation, you need to know about this. It needs to be on your agenda. It needs to be into your business intelligence. It needs to be in your discussion, because you may have the greatest ideas in the world. You need to know what's cooking in this science policy aspect. So thank you very much for this great overview, Anna. Actually, you addressed already a couple of questions I had for you. So you define science policy, if I get it right. Is there any specific topic you would like to dig in? What is important for me as a former, let's say, startup founder and working on another startup is let's say, once you have this kind of layer of understanding how I can actually activate this, why it matters for me, how I can take this on board as a startup or as a company in order to really put this into my own thinking processes, my own new product development processes, my own innovation processes. How can I take this and put it into my operation, if I may? I know.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, completely understandable question. I think with also many other processes, it's kind of important to understand at least on a very basic level the policy making process, to then understand who to approach when and where, for example, with your course from an innovator's point of view. And yeah, and then with that there come many topics along, for example, putting your topic on the agenda, on top of the agenda, raising awareness on what are your needs as an innovator, also with regards to funding and financing and general government support. And yeah, so basically, therefore, I think this is highly relevant to be on top on those sort of yeah, policy issues. And I somehow have the feeling from like when I speak to people from other sectors that didn't really come across policy, for them sometimes they fall a bit asleep when they hear those technical things about policy. But therefore, I prepared for you kind of a metaphor to get a better understanding of the instrument, of the SPP instrument and what it does. Because I don't want to put you to sleep. So imagine the SPP instrument as a compass for a ship. You're on a ship that navigates through the turbulent seas of knowledge and decision making. And the ship represents the government or the organizational policies, and the ocean that surrounds you symbolizes the complex landscape of scientific and technology advancement. Yeah, basically, it's always on the run, always changing. It's very hard to keep up to date. And the panel members come informed of the skilled navigators. So they use their expertise to interpret the ever-changing conditions of the sea, which is the scientific landscape, but also the innovators' landscape, and advise the ship's crew, which are the policymakers, on the best course on how to reach their destination, the next harbor, or in our case, a pollution-free environment, which is then basically the policy goal. And the SPP, as the ship's compass, provides the guidance and the direction based on the most accurate, current, and reliable scientific information that is available. In our case, that is globally available. And if we think a bit further, like just as a skilled navigator considers the winds, the currents, and other maritime factors, which are many around, the SPP considers then also the scientific, but also ethical and societal factors that should influence policy decisions, because it's not always only about facts and figures in this case. And the goal is therefore to ensure that this ship's journey is not only efficient, but also avoids potential hazards and risks and aligns with the broader goals of society. So in essence, a science policy panel, the compass, is a trusted guide that helps policymakers to navigate the waters of science and policy and ensures that decisions are well-informed, sustainable, and also aligned with the ever-evolving scientific landscape. I hope that made it a bit more clear to you, and why also innovators' input is definitely needed to reach that harbor.
That's perfect. I mean, thank you very much for coming up for this metaphor. I think a metaphor is the best thing you can come up with to explain a field that is still gray for people. So it's 100% clear. And I do believe that this is something that when I talk with my peers, like CEOs that are developing advanced material, or that are into B2B, I would say, to be very frank with you, Anna, we never talk about this. We never talk about this thing. We talk about, okay, what's your business model? How are you going to monetize your idea? What is your customer? But we never talk about, are you sure you are fitting in the global scheme of things? Are you sure you are in line with the overall, let's say, direction of the ship? And I think this is fundamental piece of thinking that in the startup world, sometimes we believe now we are right, the world is going to be like this, but sometimes we forget this big ship. And we need to know more where the ship is going.
Yeah. And also you need to, in a way, find the same language, because maybe sometimes you have an international crew on board, or there are maritime animals you have never seen before. And and therefore collaboration, transparency, and sometimes very open communication and other competencies, I think, are highly relevant. And this applies to all sorts of collaboration systems. I'm sure you've come across many. Yeah. And and I also wanted to point out again, because you said you sometimes forget that you are like moving in an overarching system or problem or challenge. And for example, the science policy panel is also there to link topics like the crisis we are having right now, such as biodiversity loss, pollution, and climate change, because they are all intertwined. So SPP will establish a link between those three most pressing environmental issues. And most importantly, international decision makers and politicians would then be provided with decision-making tools via this expert panel, which would hopefully ensure that political decisions can be better prioritized based on the best scientific knowledge. And and it's like you say, it's not really on the top of your guys' agenda, but this is also an important topic. Like, how do we raise attention on those sort of pressing environmental issues? And it's also highly important that we include diverse knowledge holders in those sort of processes. I'm also sure you have made the same experiences, that solution-oriented thinkers, also like you and your colleagues should be brought on board at an early stage and share their knowledge, innovation, best practices, and expertise, because the expertise is there. I also would like to point out that we do have international binding agreements in place that were concluded decades ago. Those are for various areas of chemicals. So this is, for example, the Basel, Rotterdam, and Stockholm conventions. Those are binding, but there are also other voluntary mechanisms for chemicals and waste. That is, for example, the now newly agreed on framework, the Global Framework on Chemicals. In short, that's the GFC. But nevertheless, just because there are frameworks, voluntary and binding frameworks, there is still a need, and that need has been there for many, many years, for this international panel of experts, because that will then hopefully generate attention, visibility, and resources that the issue of chemicals and waste urgently need.
Thank you very much, Anna. Thank you. So we are actually right on time closing the podcast of today. Just one thing, that kind of a tip I would like to give to my peers listening to you, is that usually what we do on the business intelligence side, we always do, let's say, competition check. Let's say every 3 or 4 months we do a competition check. We check the landscape, we check the big moves. I would say, guys, now in your business intelligence, do also a science policy check. What's cooking? And try to identify the source that is best for you. ISC3 could be a very good source, or just follow Anna on LinkedIn. Just one source. You don't need a lot. One, but at least keep it under control on your radar. What's cooking, and then you can know, and you can even, like Anna proposed. Anna is opening the door. You want to go into this boat. You want to tell your stories. You want to show what you did. You go there. There's an open invitation for people there to work together. So that's great.
Absolutely.
Yes, go ahead, Anna. Sorry.
Yeah, no, thank you so much to mention that. We can also, we also think that it's very relevant to include multiple stakeholders, in order to generate acceptance and buy-in of our sustainable chemistry community. And this includes an inclusive stakeholder dialogue with NGOs, with corporates, with innovators and academia. So this is the approach we take at the ISC3. And we also try to, it's another best practice we do is the matchmaking, for example, through our corporate challenges. So a specific corporate has a problem, then we make an open call and innovators from around the globe try to find the best solution and we match them. And also another thing I would like to point out, because we have been speaking of policy frameworks, just to give you an example of the single-use plastic ban, and there have been coming so many alternatives out of that plastic ban. So also sometimes policy frameworks do, of course, steer the development of new products. And also something I would like to mention and point out, Sebastian, what you also have come across already is interdisciplinarity. I'm a firm believer of interdisciplinarity approaches within a collaborative approach, because I think breakthroughs in innovation are just easier when the strengths of different people and from different industries can be combined and jointly be effective. And and therefore I also would like to close now. You also asked me in a former conversation, where do I see the science policy in 5 years from now, or maybe the SPP? Yeah, I thought about it, and I have just tiny wishes. So I would wish that decision makers, policy makers have useful material at hand to steer national policy. And I also wish that these materials are represented and produced of the input of all relevant actors in this field. And of course, I would love to see that we generate new knowledge, which also can lead to change stakeholder behavior or consumers' behavior, or that even maybe new, more sustainable products become the result out of that. Yeah, and thirdly, I of course have to say that because I'm the director of the Collaborative Center for Sustainable Chemistry, I of course hope that environmental sound innovations find their place in the SPP, and that green and sustainable chemistry becomes a really essential part of a future effective management of chemicals and waste. And also, to wrap it up, I wish that the consideration of social factors and high standards of ethics, education, and justice in our sustainable chemistry innovation continue to address the societal and sustainability challenges worldwide. Thank you, Sebastian.
Thank you. Vielen Dank, Anna. I mean, what can I say? That's a very complete picture from the macro to the micro. So I mean, it's perfect, Anna. So thank you very much for your time, for taking the time, Anna. Thank you very much for all the preparation you did for this podcast, because I know you prepared a lot and people can actually hear it was very well prepared. So thank you very much for that. You want to know more, you reach out to Anna. You want to know more, you go to IC3 website. You want to know more, you go to GIZ. These are the people you want to talk to get more insights. So thank you for the audience, people that were there today, the people that are going to listen to this podcast afterwards. Like I used to say, stronger together. So let's keep on doing this, and I see you next week for another guest, another podcast. Anna, vielen Dank nochmal.
Yeah, thanks. Have a good day. Bye bye.